Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton with episode 186. And we're going to be talking about some bad words today. Well, okay, there are more phrases. The words themselves aren't bad. Words are just words. But the concepts, I think they can do some harm. So why am I talking about this right now? Well, there are these two words that keep coming up in a lot of marketing I'm seeing out there because the holidays are coming, right? And what's the general marketing around the holidays is often around food, is often like indulgent and craving and sweet and, all these things that are very luxurious, right? And then we see on the other side when people are trying to market their keto treats or low calorie treats or whatever, like anything that they're trying to say this is healthier than the normal thing. What are the phrases we often hear used? We often hear people saying things like guilt-free. Guilt-free, fill in the blank. Guilt-free implies that there are guilt-filled. This one's guilt-free, then the other one is guilt-full. Now, obviously, I'm not a moron. Well, I don't know if it's obvious I'm not a moron. I should say I'm not a moron, so it is obvious that we have guilt around food. I mean, just a few episodes ago, we talked about emotional eating and the cycle of guilt and shame. It's well understood that guilt gets very attached to food. But I also think it's important to know that that is a harmful attachment. We want to decouple those thoughts and feelings because coupling them, putting them together, linking them causes harm. So when we do things like saying, this guilt-free brownie, yada, yada, yada is yada, whatever, obviously this is usually a marketing situation, right? And by marketing, it could be a free recipe or whatever. But when someone's trying to draw your attention to a recipe or a product or whatever, referring to things as guilt-free is damaging you. So I don't do it on my marketing. If I did it in the past, I stopped because I eventually learned better. Once you know better, you do better. Guilt-free does not belong in a food context. Food and guilt, though we have a lot of very deep-rooted connections between them, the work we need to do is to decouple them. And using phrases and words keeps them coupled. And so I would say do your best to decouple those phrases in your mind and decouple those concepts in your mind. And whenever you say something to yourself or to somebody else, that you hear yourself and you say, nope, I'm going to catch myself there, or I'm going to correct myself there. I'm going to fix what just happened there. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to pay attention to these well-worn pathways I've created between words, phrases, thoughts, emotions, and actions. So every time you think or you hear, you're like guilt-free, whatever, it's an opportunity for you to question that. Connected is this thought of a cheat meal, cheating on your diet. People in the holidays are like, are you going to cheat for Christmas? Are you going to cheat when you go Christmas cookies, whatever, like cheat, right? So sort of step by step here, these are connected, right? Because cheating is something you should feel guilty about, right? But you can't cheat on your diet. You can't do it because you are an adult. And you determine the rules and the parameters of diet. And people, I get it. We live in a society where we infantilize ourselves. We make ourselves, bad or good or basically children, right? Looking for approval all the time. And it's just so harmful. Am I saying that there might never be a food that you choose not to eat? Of course not. Of course, we all choose our boundaries, choose our parameters. Notice the word I'm using over and again. Choose. We choose our boundaries. We choose where we draw lines. Some people draw the line and they say, I don't do well when I eat refined carbohydrates or whatever, chocolate, sweet foods in general. Pick your boundaries wherever work for you. But choosing to go outside of those boundaries was a choice, not a cheat, because you can't cheat on yourself. You're there. Cheating implies you're getting away with something or you're trying to get away with something, right? You cheat on a spouse or a partner, you're engaging in a behavior that they would disapprove of, right? And would not want you to do, but it's not their choice. So that's breaking an agreement, right? Or you cheat on a test. You broke an agreement that this test was something that you were going to take to assess your knowledge, right? If you eat something, that's a choice. It can't be a cheat. But when you call it a cheat, you partially absolve yourself, right? You're like, oh, it was a cheat. You're kind of looking for a way to explain it away in a way. But you also still have feelings of guilt associated with it, right? We feel guilt, like if we're not a sociopath, we feel guilty when we cheat on something, right? Unless we feel like the rules aren't fair. Some people, you're like, I cheated, I got away with that parking space or whatever. But if you're like, but the rules weren't fair, so then you don't feel bad. But yeah, food, you can't cheat with food. Can't. So don't call it a cheat. It's a cop out. I know it's weird, right? It makes you feel worse, but it's a cop out. Because in a way, it's like, well, everybody cheats or whatever. No, they don't. Everyone makes choices. But I feel like choice puts the power back in your hands and allows you to own your choices and make better decisions. So as we come into the holiday season, you might decide, hey, on Christmas Day, on Thanksgiving meal, on yada, 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 right? Whatever. I'm going to eat like this. I'm going to allow these kinds of foods. I'm going to allow this much food, wherever you place your boundaries. You might say, I am widening my boundaries significantly for this event, for this day, for this season, for whatever. But you decide. If you don't verbalize it, you still decided. But if you don't think about it ahead of time, you're more likely to get into trouble. So I would suggest as we go into the holiday season that you're very careful around these two concepts. Guilt-free. No, there shouldn't be guilt anyway because you're just making choices. Choices, not cheats. Again, you're just making choices. How do you feel about your choice? You can use your choices, use your life data, right? What happened, feedback to decide what the next choice will be or how the next thing is going to go or how you're going to set your boundaries differently, right? But you're an adult, hopefully. You're an adult. I know adulting is terrible, but you got to do it. So you're an adult, you get to choose. So again, stop using the word cheat. Stop paying attention to people that sell you guilt-free things. Now, you might say, I like the phrase, I know it's not as catchy. I often use the phrase low impact, a low impact treat. What does that mean? Well, it's a treat in certain ways, but it fits well in my macros or in my plan. It's a low repercussion. I don't know. Pick a phrase, whatever. It's fine. I don't know that you need a phrase, but it might be like, oh, I'm going to create some special treats for this holiday season that are going to work well within my boundaries. They're low impact. They're not going to damage anything. And so that's where I would say adjust your wording. And then this is just a bonus. I'm just going to throw this one in here because I just don't like this phrase. It's not really seasonal. It'll come into play as we see people trying to sell you fitness programs in the new year. Tone. There's no such thing as toning. No. You either lose fat, gain muscle, or gain or lose fat and muscle, right? You could gain or lose or maintain. But when people talk about toning, it was more an 80s thing, wasn't it? I want to get toned. You can't do that. You're going to either get leaner, fatter, or more or less muscular. Toning isn't a thing. You could tone your hair. Isn't that a thing when you get color treatments? Tone. Anyway, just threw that in there just for smiles and giggles. But I will join you next week for some other thoughts about things. But these were my thoughts for today. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.